Good day to you. Our subject in this section is frustration. And is section 6. Let us start off by looking at candidate 1, frustration IIS. We notice his frustration IIS is 18, and his GBS is 12, both are optimal, and therefore we can conclude that there is few things that would cause him any frustration. We also notice that his stress IIS is slightly overactivated, and is in harmony with his inner insecurity. The candidate is most dissatisfied with his job, and at the same time he declares that he is not treated equally. Further, his satisfaction IIS is also highly overactivated. He further has a problem with the effectiveness of a supervisor. Notwithstanding the fact that the supervisor is totally ineffective in all his functioning areas, according to the candidate's perceptions. Once again, we have proved this candidate to be dishonest and untruthful, because anyone who is not treated equally, and has the conflict with a supervisor, would become very stressed and highly frustrated, which in this instance is not the case. Moving on to candidate 2, we find quite the opposite to candidate 1, whereas frustration IIS and stress IIS is overactivated. Yet his job satisfaction and equality are optimal, despite the fact that he has overactivated stress and frustration. We now have to determine what is causing his sense of frustration and stress. Often people with a high intensity of morality and low risk become stressed and frustrated simply because of their lack of inner insecurity and sense of responsibility and reliability. Let us look a little deeper. Notice that the candidate leadership ability is optimal, and so is his supervisors. And so are the candidate's listening skills, in harmony with his supervisors. And so is his communication skills in harmony with his supervisors. It is a little inconsistent to say that his competence of 75 is lower than his supervisors at 89, and then say he is a lot more reliable than his supervisor. The candidate's job satisfaction is inconsistent, simply because his leadership qualities are all similar to his supervisors, which is the direct cause of his overactivated frustration and stress levels. Moving on to candidate 3, we find that the candidate is both frustrated and stressed, with an overactivated inner insecurity level. It is worrying to note that the candidate's job security score is past the clinical cutoff point, which could cause irrational behavior, whereby the candidate could become extremely dangerous within his working environment, in light of the fact that he feels that he is not treated equally. Further, he is not expressing his anger emotionally, so it would be extremely difficult to detect this anger. Notwithstanding the fact that the candidate is undoubtedly far more frustrated than he claims, this candidate, besides being frustrated, is probably suffering from depression, as you will notice that there is nothing positive in his life at present. Except for reliability, which is at 92%. However, let us bear in mind under financial verification that his responsibility scored 75, which was inconsistent with reliability, notwithstanding the fact that we found this candidate to be untrustworthy in the past reviews. Moving on to candidate 4, who has manipulated this audit constantly throughout. Just take a look at how many constructs are out of touch with the reality. We further find that this candidate's inner insecurity is blatantly manipulated, as it is impossible to have a score of 2 when you have a stress IIS of 18 and frustration at 25. This is a very high-risk candidate, and it is easy to tell when he's lying. All he needs to do is open his mouth, and you would know that he was trying to deceive you. Looking at candidate 5, we find the following. The candidate's frustration and stress levels are very highly overactivated, where this candidate would lose his temper very easily, and would become very aggressive quickly. We further notice that the candidate's satisfaction IIS is highly underactivated, and at the same time, his job satisfaction is the same. Notice that the candidate dislikes his supervisor intensely, and that he feels that his supervisor has biased tendencies, simply because he believes that he is not treated equally. It is obvious that he believes that he is a better leader than his supervisor, which would cause conflict, and that is why he is highly frustrated and stressed in the IIS system. Changing gear for a moment, you will notice that the screen has changed to leadership ability, described in section 8, which is a future lecture, but there is some very important information that needs to be utilized in explaining this frustration section. We have just discussed how the candidate has serious conflict with his supervisor, which we concluded was the cause of frustration and stress IIS. I would like you to notice that this candidate's passion is highly underactivated, scoring 35 on the positive scale, meaning that he is close to the clinical cutting score, which is totally inconsistent with his perseverance, focus, and commitment, meaning this candidate is dishonest and trying to deceive us. Adding to this deception is the fact that he hates having the responsibility of being autonomous and authoritative as a leader. This is totally inconsistent with his leadership ability of 81 and result orientation of 89. Getting back to where we left off, we find that this candidate has been trying to deceive us, therefore, he is both untrustworthy and a totally undesirable character. Candidate 6 has no frustrations or stress IIS, and he is 95% job satisfied, yet his satisfaction holistically is 56. What could be the reason for that? Which in real terms is inconsistent. He is telling us that he feels 56% satisfied, without any stress or frustration. Once again, that would make him irresponsible and unreliable. I will not waste any more time on this candidate, as previously stated in previous lectures, as he is manipulating, or using impression management. Candidate 7 has overactivated stress and frustration IIS. Notwithstanding the fact that his job satisfaction is optimal, yet he holistically is very dissatisfied holistically, so let us investigate the reason for that. He feels that he has been treated equally at work, and further, he feels most secure in his job. So that cannot be the reason for his dissatisfaction IIS. He believes that he is a great leader, as indicated, meaning that he is far better than his supervisor. Take note what he thinks about his supervisor. This would make his job satisfaction inconsistent, however, it could explain the stress and frustration IIS. With all that reasoning, we must be totally aware that this candidate was previously found to be a very high risk, as we found in section 5. that his risk of 78 overruled his personal standards of 55 and character qualities of 69. Further, he was not motivated by money, as both his financial guarantee and financial compensation were highly underactivated, which through research makes him a fraud suspect. Lastly, let us take a look at Candidate 8. This candidate, as was Candidate 7, indicating that he is both frustrated and stressed IIS. His job satisfaction has a much higher score than his satisfaction IIS. This candidate definitely has a bad perception of his supervisor, as has been indicated now. The candidate is as bad as his supervisor, as he himself has no leadership skills. And what makes things worse is that he feels incompetent in what he does. So this concludes this section, and I sincerely hope that my presentation was clear and that the reasoning behind it has become a lot easier to understand. Goodbye.